He asked to sleep in her barn for one night. 6 months later, the entire town was shocked. The storm was so fierce that even the oldest people in town said they had never seen rain fall that hard. Lightning split the sky above the lonely farmhouse at the edge of town, and the muddy road had become almost impossible to walk. That was when a tired, soaked stranger appeared at the gate. His clothes were drenched, his boots were covered in mud, and a worn backpack hung heavily from his shoulders. He looked like a man who had lost everything. With nowhere else to go, he knocked on the farmhouse door and asked for one simple thing: a place to sleep in the barn for just one night. Before we continue, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of helping others, please like this video, comment below, share it with your friends, and subscribe to CEO Secret Story for more emotional and inspiring stories. The farmhouse belonged to Margaret, a 76-year-old widow who had lived alone for many years. Her husband had passed away a decade earlier, and her children lived far away in different states. Most days, the only sounds she heard were the wind moving through the trees and the occasional creak of the old wooden house. Life had become quiet, predictable, and lonely. When Margaret saw the stranger standing in the rain, something about his exhausted face touched her heart. Many people would have turned him away. After all, he was a complete stranger. But Margaret remembered difficult times from her own past, times when kindness from others had helped her survive. She pointed toward the old barn and allowed him to stay for the night. The stranger's name was Daniel. He thanked her sincerely and disappeared into the barn before the storm grew even worse. Margaret expected him to leave the next morning and never return. But when she woke up, she noticed something unusual. The barn doors had been repaired. A broken fence post near the field had been replaced. Even the tools that had been scattered around for months were neatly organized. Daniel explained that he wanted to repay her kindness before leaving. Margaret appreciated the gesture and offered him breakfast. During the meal, she learned that Daniel had once owned a successful construction company. A business partner had betrayed him, leaving him bankrupt. Then his marriage fell apart. Within 2 years, he had lost nearly everything he had worked for. He had been traveling from town to town, searching for temporary jobs and trying to rebuild his life. Margaret listened quietly. She could see the pain behind his eyes. It was the kind of pain that comes from losing not only money, but also hope. When Daniel prepared to leave, Margaret surprised herself by asking him to stay a few more days and help around the farm. Daniel agreed. Those few days slowly turned into weeks. The old farmhouse began changing. Daniel repaired leaking roofs, fixed broken gates, restored neglected sheds, and painted weathered walls. The property that had once looked abandoned slowly came back to life. More importantly, Margaret's lonely days began to disappear. She finally had someone to share meals with, someone who listened to her stories, and someone who genuinely cared. Yet not everyone in town approved. Rumors spread quickly. Some people believed Daniel was taking advantage of an elderly woman. Others suspected he was hiding something. Every small town has people who judge before knowing the truth, and this town was no different. Whenever Margaret visited the grocery store, she could feel the whispers following her through the aisles. Still, she trusted her instincts. Over the next several months, Daniel continued working tirelessly. But he wasn't only helping Margaret. He noticed that many elderly residents in town lived in homes needing repairs. Some couldn't afford contractors. Others had no family nearby. Quietly, Daniel began volunteering his time. He repaired porches, fixed leaking roofs, replaced broken steps, and helped anyone who needed assistance. At first, people were suspicious, but as weeks passed, they realized he never asked for payment. He simply wanted to help. Something remarkable began happening. Young people in town noticed Daniel's efforts and started volunteering beside him. Local businesses donated materials. Retired workers offered their skills. Before long, a small community movement had formed around one man's decision to repay a simple act of kindness. The town slowly transformed. Homes that had been neglected for years were repaired. Elderly residents felt supported again. Neighbors who barely knew each other started working together. Hope returned to places where loneliness had quietly taken hold. Then came the day that shocked everyone. 6 months after the stormy night, when Daniel first arrived, the town gathered in the community center for a special event. Most people expected a routine town meeting. Instead, the mayor stepped onto the stage and announced something no one had anticipated. A large national charity organization had learned about the volunteer movement Daniel helped create. Inspired by what had happened, They had selected the town for a major community revitalization grant worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. The grant would fund home repairs, public projects, and community programs for years to come. The room erupted in applause, but the biggest surprise was still waiting. The mayor revealed that Daniel had been quietly working behind the scenes with the charity organization for months. Using his construction experience and leadership skills, he had created detailed plans and proposals that convinced the organization to invest in the town. The same man who had arrived homeless and hopeless 6 months earlier was now standing on stage receiving a community leadership award. Many people in the audience wiped tears from their eyes. Some of them were the same people who had doubted him when he first arrived. Margaret sat in the front row, smiling proudly. She remembered the frightened stranger standing in the rain and asking for a place to sleep in her barn. She had offered him 1 night of shelter. In return, he had changed an entire town. Before we reach the ending, I have a special request. Please comment.